Hello, everyone. Welcome to our discussion today on working together, how to find your international partner. My name is Jo Duncombe, and I'm a senior consultant working with British Council Film. And the reason that today's discussion was of such interest to us at the British Council is because sort of in line with, I don't know if anyone attended the talk before about the tax relief in the UK, but there's money available to help encourage and facilitate co-production with the UK, and lots of nice incentives now available. And what we want to do with a new fund that we've introduced with our partners at the BFI and the National Lottery is we've got funding to help UK-based filmmakers travel internationally with their projects, not just to festivals, but also to labs and international co-production markets and forums. So that money exists to help you travel with your work and hopefully help you make those connections and partnerships internationally to build your co-productions. So that's why I was so interested in taking part in this panel today. And what we really want to explore with our panel is how we go about finding those partnerships, making those partnerships, and what opportunities exist out there to help us kind of facilitate those relationships with filmmakers and projects internationally. My name, as I say, is Jo Duncombe. I'm a white woman in my mid-30s, and I've got brown hair. I'm going to introduce all of my panel, and then I'm going to ask each of them to give a visual description as well, in case anyone is listening and not watching the panel discussion, because I know they go online afterwards. So as part of our co-production funding that we can offer support for filmmakers to travel, I'm delighted that we have two representatives from co-production forums and markets who are part of our sort of eligible funding list, which is great news. So I'd like to welcome firstly Alessandra Pastore from When East Meets West, which is a co-production forum organised by the FVG Audiovisual Fund and the Trieste Film Festival. And they combine lots of wonderful things, including market and training, policy making, dialogue and inspiration, which I love. They use that word on their website, across a series of events, forums and labs. So welcome, Alessandra.
Thank you very much, Jo. Thanks for inviting me. As you have requested, I'm a white woman in my early 40s. I have glasses and brown hair. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alessandra. Our next guest is Guevara, who is the co-production market organizer and curator for Dok Leipzig, which is obviously a very well-established festival and market with lots of success stories under their belt. Guevara is also an established documentary filmmaker and co-founder of Docsbox Association for the support of Arab documentary filmmakers. So welcome, Guevara. If you could give us an audio description of yourself.
Thank you, Justin. I'm originally from Syria, Middle East, so I have a different color. I'm a woman in my late 30s with like brown hair, brown eyes.
Thank you, Guevara. Welcome. And I'm also delighted to welcome two wonderful filmmakers who have a wealth of experience working internationally with their projects and who can hopefully give us some insights into how they've made the most of opportunities to develop international partnerships through their projects and work. So firstly, Elham Shakarifar is a BAFTA-nominated documentary producer and founder of Hakawati, which is a production, curation and distribution company based in London. Hakawati means storyteller in Arabic, and this craft is at the very heart of everything that Elham does across her work as a filmmaker, curator, poet, translator, and educator. Elham, welcome.
Thank you, Jo. I'm a fair-skinned woman. I've got brown hair, brown eyes. I'm wearing a keffiyeh and a t-shirt that says critical, which I think is central to our conversation.
Thank you, Elham. Welcome. And also a very warm welcome to Justin Pechperti, who's co-founder of the French-based Les Valseurs, an Oscar-nominated and César-winning French film company. He's worked extensively on co-productions across a number of genres and mediums, including live action, animation, and documentary. And he's just got back from Chile. So thank you for joining us. You must be quite jet-lagged, but welcome, Justin.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a white man in my very late 30s, brown hair. Thanks.
Thank you. So yeah, the focus of today's discussion is really to explore what the opportunities are and how we can make the most out of them in terms of building these international partnerships through our work. And I'd like to start with Elham and Justin as filmmakers who've worked collaboratively across a number of regions. I'd love to hear from you about what you think the key benefits for you and your projects are in terms of building international relationships and partnerships through your work, thinking not just about sort of attracting financiers, but also in terms of your own professional development and the development of your projects creatively as well. So Elham, if you're happy to start.
Yes. Well, film is very collaborative, isn't it? There's nothing we can achieve on our own. A couple of years ago, I produced a film in Nepal called Even When I Fall, about a young circus. And we learned from them this lovely idea that together you go faster, alone you go faster, but together you go further. And one of the amazing things about circus, which I think really applies to any form of collaboration, is that you need to be able to 100% trust the person who's throwing you into the air and have very, very clear communication with them, because you need to know that they're going to catch you, or know that, if you're out of step by a second. And I think that's a really central way of thinking about collaboration and what you can achieve with good communication, with good collaboration. You can do things that maybe feel like a risk to you to do alone. You can do things that maybe you don't fully understand the different kind of facets of, because you have someone bringing in a different perspective. And you can hone, I think, really what a film or a project or its ambitions can be, because you're thinking beyond maybe your skies and inviting in someone else's.
Thank you, Elham. That felt like a very poetic start. Justin.
Not sure I'll be that poetic myself, but just to give a little bit of background, so we started the company 11 years ago, and we didn't go to film school. I say we because I have a partner. We didn't study cinema. We came from the creative aspect. Just so you have an insight of how pragmatic was our approach as producers, because we didn't have any pre-established rule of how to do it. The only thing that was giving us the desire to work with someone was a connection with the director, a vision of the world, authenticity, and of course, cinema language that speaks to us. And it happened that very quickly thanks to festivals, we met a lot of directors coming from all around the world. And we are lucky because we're based in France, where there is a huge ecosystem that maybe we'll talk about later, that really helps to structure and finance international co-production. So it was a possibility for us. It was not the first reason, but it was a possibility for us. And even when we started with short films, and then you start working with a director from a country, and then this director starts to introduce you to like another family of directors, and then by capillarity, you begin to meet a lot of incredible directors that you want to work with. So I'd say maybe in the later stage, what I really enjoy doing is to reverse it and starting to have directors from abroad making films in France, so we could reverse the gaze and not only be like French producers producing films abroad, but trying to also get them telling stories in our country with their own gaze.
You said, Justin, that the festivals were a really great environment for you to start sort of building those relationships and partnerships. And I wondered if you could both give some examples of international events and opportunities that you've kind of made the most of, the opportunities that you've found have been most useful in terms of building those partnerships. And then sort of on top of that, like what kind of approach you go into those events now and those organizations with to make the most out of them.
Yeah, I mean, the list is so long in terms of possibilities and festivals, and I think there are very different energies that you find in different parts of the world, approach to business or industry, or the kind of, even the idea of imagination. And I think sometimes I'll kind of reach out to one space because I know what a project needs is not necessarily financing, but it's a kind of creative vision. So it's like very project by project, I guess. I think so. I work a lot within the Arab world, spaces like Humra, the Doha Film Institute kind of closed industry platform is an incredibly astute space because it's very handpicked. It's one rare space where actually the projects are there for an entire week and it's the decision makers that come and go. So in a sense, it kind of shifts the dynamic of the way film is always understood as something where we do all the making work, but actually there's a whole world that exists around our films that's more powerful than us. And I find that a really interesting challenge. There are spaces like, I've pitched films, for example, in Tokyo Docs, and I think, you know, if you're making films that are thinking from another perspective in the world, you want to kind of decenter the Anglo-centric than actually going outside the Anglo-centric. Conversations that might happen in Carthage in Tunisia or Marrakesh are going to be obviously very different to the conversations that are happening in like Sheffield Docfest. But it doesn't mean that one is more valuable than the other. It really depends what it is that where you want to position your film. So I've named a few. Another that I found really valuable was IFP in the US. And there are like Camden International Festival, you know, these kind of spaces that have much more curated approach, I think, can be really valuable to the smaller, intimate films that I produce, which are documentaries, often made longitudinally, often made with too little money. And so we need to be careful that when we're going into a space, it's one that's going to nurture us and not going to exhaust us and make us feel really stressed about how it's never going to happen. So yeah. Hopefully that's a roundabout.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you, Elham. Justin.
Yeah, it would be, I mean, there is tons of examples because I think almost all the films we've done, so right now we produce 40 short films and 6 feature films, that 4 are actually now in production. And I think all of them came either from meeting in a festival or meeting in a lab. I would add just that again, as we didn't come from like a network or a school network, for us it was an absolute necessity. The only place where we could actually meet directors was festivals or social media that happen also, that you can do alone in your house. But arriving here, and I think I could have a couple of examples, like in 2016, we met a Brazilian director here in Cannes. He was presenting a film. A couple of months later, we were shooting his short in Brazil. A couple of months later, we were presenting his film in Venice. And there, in Venice, we met 2 Australian directors that were in competition with the short. And then the year after, we shot their film in Tasmania. And then it goes and goes. And here in Cannes, we have a lot of good examples. La Fabrique, for instance. I think 2 of the international co-production feature that we're doing now are coming from La Fabrique. The Torino Film Lab is also a very good platform. Let's say that the idea is always to provoke chance. I would say that the lab are giving us an opportunity to guide us through the talents, because we come here to meet them, to discover, to create a match, and the labs are here because we could just write to all of them and meet them, but thanks to the lab or the co-production meeting, we are helped in that path. But at the end, you never really know. Sometimes you go to a lab because there is a project that you like, and you end up talking at the coffee machine to another guy or another woman, and then that leads you to the film you're going to make in 3 years. So I would say the most important is to move, go there, travel, meet people, and that's how opportunities happen.
I love that idea of provoking chance. It's very nice. And I think that brings in very nicely into the conversation Alessandra and Guevara, who are real chance provokers and helping filmmakers make those connections in very organized and direct ways. So it would be great if you could both start by giving us a kind of brief outline of what your organization does to help facilitate and provoke these new partnerships, and what kind of projects that you are looking for.
So Venice Meets West is basically a co-production market. It's a gate, as has already been highlighted. So it's a place where we facilitate connection. And we do that through a series of activities. The most traditional one, it's a co-production forum. So we select up around 20 projects in development, fiction, feature, documentaries, and since last year, short animation. And hopefully I will have later the chance to explain you why we decided to introduce this new format. So basically, with international co-production potential that are looking for partners. So we try to facilitate, ideally, connection between East and West. Initially Europe, now it's becoming wider, so East and West of the full world. Basically, we try to go wider, actually. Despite the traditional things, we have a work in progress session, means a showcase of projects who are already in shootings or looking for sales, festival release, so that are kind of not anymore in development. And actually, we decided a couple of weeks ago during COVID, actually, we felt the need to explore different ways to facilitate the connection that we've been hearing till now. And we launched 2 new activities. One is running cooperation with EAVE, the training provider. It's called EAVE Slate. And it runs within Venice Meets West, so it basically overlaps with the event. And it's a lab, intense lab, 3.5 days, where we select between 8 and 12 production companies with a slate project between 6 and 9 projects. And we actually help them to navigate the sustainability of their slate project, the slate of project according to their country, their size of their company, including the team that they have. So basically, we work with them on their business plan or their slate of project, trying to help them to create a medium long-term strategy for the company more than for the project. So if with our normal session of pitching, we focus on project, with the other slate, we move to companies. The last things, the segment that we added a couple of weeks ago, years ago, are they go actually in the direction to inspire producers, which are our main target. We launched a series of so-called inspirational labs. Again, we basically have a few hours per day during the market dedicated to those producers who want to explore different business models. So we have, for instance, a lab, an inspirational lab dedicated to seriality. We have a lab dedicated to gaming, or how to navigate between the production of gaming and audiovisual works. One dedicated to create a campaign, a marketing campaign for the film, virtual production. So, and all these labs are actually meant to stimulate new business opportunity for producer. So we don't really aim to teach our producer how to produce a game, but to let them understand how this dimension works and how they could approach and diversify their slate of projects, their business model to be more sustainable. Despite that, we have a series of side activities that we run. Again, some of them are also door closed. And again, we actually organize them according to the needs of the industry, what we feel, what our producers actually are really suggesting us. The biggest one that we have, it's actually a think tank that we run with the EAVE. We have run this in the last 3 years, actually. And it's on equitable approach to co-production, for instance. This is, again, we lock into a room literally for 1.5 days, 20 decision makers coming literally from all over the world. And we'll stimulate them to discuss about the current challenging things that we need to face or that we will face in the short future, and how we can really work in this world and make this work also for the full industry.
That's really fascinating, and that's a question I'd like to come on to after, in terms of sort of how you prepare filmmakers and how filmmakers prepare for the challenges of working internationally across cultures and different working contexts. But we'll come to that later, because I'd love to get from Guevara a kind of overview of the work that you support and what kind of projects you're looking for.
So it's this year I'm very happy that we are celebrating the 20th edition of the co-production market, because as many of you maybe know, that Dok Leipzig, it's the oldest documentary film festival. This year is the 67 editions already.
Wow.
20 of them, last 20 years, we will have been doing this co-production market. The co-production market is specifically for feature lengths documentary and animated documentary. This is specialized for us in Dok Leipzig, that we are very interested in animation and documentary. And We usually select a 30 project for the market that happened over 2 days. We don't have central pitching. The market, it's about meetings, individual meetings, one-to-one meetings, and the idea is that we invite the project teams. Mainly it's the producers who apply, and we welcome only producers or producer plus director or 2 producers. Like the directors alone cannot come to the market to present the project, and we have registration or request from other producers that are potential co-producers who are seeking for project to co-produce, and we do this kind of matchmaking. So we ask decision makers and the producer to ask to meet with the project, and we do the same with the project. And then we do this kind of magic matchmaking, depending on each project aims or what are the team plan, what kind of production plan they have. We only take project in development or early production, because the kind of co-production we are supporting is that the one completely rely in collaboration from the beginning. We do not support, like for example, project in post-production, because I know sometimes many producers prefer to have this kind of co-producer that they don't maybe even drink a coffee together. They just bring the money in and that's it. Like they are not interested in the ethics maybe of co-production or what type of story we are collaborating in. They are not into the storyline or dramaturgical line or whatever, but we don't support this kind of, like, we are more into encouraging into co-production that's push like all sides in this partnership, you know. And it's not a training platform. We have it's 2-day packed of meeting from the morning till evening, and really crowded and really focused, take a lot of energy. And we just opened the call 3 days ago. So the deadline is still till mid of July. And what is like, we are really interested in author-driven documentary, and we are recently start open also to series, like one of series documentary that's very important for us to start to support and welcome. And it's a completely a networking and financing event where we try to bring all the stakeholders from the German market and from internationally to meet the project. We take projects from all over the world. Most important for us, again, it's to be creative documentary, author-driven, in development or maximum early production. I'm sorry, I'm trying to say sometimes like technical things, but I think it's also helped to define, imagine like what kind of project also welcome to the market. Yeah.
And in terms of the selection process of projects, I wonder if you could both give us a bit more detail in terms of what you're looking at in terms of building that cohort of projects, and specifically who if you're trying to sort of very directly match projects to countries, and if you're doing a kind of balancing act of a kind of regional perspective of making sure that lots of regions are represented, or does that change from year to year? How do you go about sort of looking at the global spread of projects?
We normally have a double focus, geographical focus every year, one on the Eastern Europe, one on the Western Europe. And according to that, we try to bring some projects from those countries and decision makers from those countries. But we actually reserve, let's say, a couple of places out of 20 projects for the 20 in the project for the co-production forum. So what we really try to do is to go quality-wise, of course, and for those projects where we really feel can be effective in terms of the size of the market, because we are a medium market, we have up to 600 people, everything is happening in one location, and this is done exactly to facilitate those connections. So the market runs 3 days, and first of all, you will meet people, no matter if at breakfast or lunch, but you will bump into people for sure. And this is the added value, you know, to have a small environment where everybody is in any case there. It's actually happening in Italy in late January, so it's not even so sunny that people would go out, so this helps somehow in Trieste, in the north of Italy. So actually, we really try to make sure to have those projects that we can help to develop further. You know, the development part, you all know, it's the most delicate part of the production, and it's the moment in which you really need to make effective every word that you share with your potential partner, in the way in which you present your project. So according to our decision makers that are keeping coming to Trieste every year, we try to differentiate, so to have new people, new companies. We really care a lot about the diversity of profiles that we invite in terms of decision makers and project. We always try to balance new talents and upcoming directors and producers with more experienced producers, with project from more stable companies. So we really try to create an ecosystem where everybody could be the added value of the other.
Yeah, we also kind of like, yeah, some things are same, but different. But because in Dok Leipzig, we welcome project, as I said, from everywhere. We do the pre-selection ourselves in the industry department, and then we invite an international selection committee also to be connected to both like the local market in Germany and the international market. As I said, like we try to make, of course, like give a chance to different area that are underrepresented or different society or community that are underrepresented. So diversity here become the key word again, like to how we are selecting a project. I remember last year, like the 30 selecting project were like from over like 28 countries, because some of them like also had some small co-production already in the place. But the idea is, yes, how we expand geographically, like again, after these 2 days, you know, the countries become like really double or triple. But yeah, we give, for example, our main award in the co-production market that's of 5,000 K. It's given to best female director or identify as a female director, and this is presented from the Culture Ministry in Saxony in Leipzig. And other awards are presented also, but we try to also divide this award, like how it's presented and how it will be divided in the selection. It's very diversity. I don't know, like if you look at the catalog, like because we have the 30 projects from the selection, from the application we get, but we have always 5 seats for 5 projects that we award in other platforms. Like, for example, we go to Dok Lab Poland to award a project or invite a project, or we go to Durban Film Mart to also invite a project. We have other different partner, and we change sometime like this partner to give opportunity to other places and keys that where we don't have like really reach out there. So we try to invite them and award them in that way, so we have it represented. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd love to come back to this question of what it means to build like a meaningful international partnership and collaboration through your work. So Elham and Justin, I'd love to get your perspective in terms of what the biggest challenges have been for you when you've been working on an international co-production or project together, and how you've overcome those challenges specifically, and what you're looking for in partners to make sure that you can build relationships through your work that really matter and create great projects.
I'd say the key thing, it's trust. That's the basis. And I've been through projects where there was no trust, and I saw how hard it can be. So I would say really the beginning is to be with someone that you know that you're going to work with trust, confidence, and that you're trying to make the same film. Then I think it's interesting to, I mean, we had the presentation of how you select projects. From our perspective, it's also interesting to, of course, we identify the labs we want to go to because of the projects we have. So we kind of editorialize the labs and find the perfect match. But it's important to understand that there are 2 ways to go, I mean, to approach those co-production markets. Either you have a project and you're with a filmmaker or director and you're looking for international partners, or you don't and you're looking for projects. And I think both approaches are interesting, because it's sometimes you don't need to have a project and to work on your project and to apply to travel. You can just go there, meet people, and another important thing is that you will meet collaborators, but you will also meet funders. the decision makers you were mentioning. So it's also a good opportunity to test your project, to understand what those funders are looking for, and to start getting attention on your project. So really the both approach are interesting.
It was your question?
Some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered through international co-production projects and how you've overcome those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think this first thing of like collaboration, looking in the same direction, you have to identify what matters to you, what your red lines are, like what you can't compromise on, and what you can negotiate around or work with. I think sometimes working between countries that don't have like a clear, so there are different ways of collaborating, like there can be formal co-productions or informal co-productions, and sometimes there's a system by which, it's difficult to work into the formal co-production, which has certain financial benefits, but co-production outside of the formal space is also of value and has other but less financial rewards, I guess. I think the difficulties sometimes have been around systems that don't necessarily speak to each other very directly. And we see that a lot with, say, UK, US speak to each other very well. And then Europe has a kind of different way of talking. And then other parts of the world have a slightly different way of speaking. And so then how they speak to each other is where you enter as the producer or as the producers. And this, I think producers also, the kind of complementary skills are really important, and kind of finding the position that each one of you want to take, I suppose, within a film. But in how you square the circles of how you make it work within your own country so that you can be representative of your country, or the film can be representative of your country. Hopefully that is, I guess, the key. Is that?
Yeah, no, that's really.
Was that clear?
Yeah, and I
feel that's less poetic than my previous answers. I'm
still on it, still poetic. I'd love to bring you two in actually on this point. Guevara, you were saying that you bring sort of 25 different countries represented in the last market. What are you doing as organisations to hold those spaces in ways that can bring all those systems and different working systems together and facilitate in ways that doesn't lean too far into one system, for example?
But before, I just wanted to comment on the same side, like the idea Justin and Ham started, because the idea is that there is many platforms and there is different opportunity. That's something amazing, but that's also raised the competitive side of like us. If I'm gonna speak now, switch to the filmmaker hat. It gives us all this impression that if I'm not in the market, if I don't go to every forum, if I'm not in every pitching, whatever, then I'm not gonna have also good chance for the screening or for the premiere or for the whatever. So we are looking as a filmmakers also of this visibility, and that's also sometimes make just the life of this production just more complicated and more difficult, because not every project, for example, it's on the place for co-production. Some stories or some films can just go like make a great life without needing to co-production, and co-production sometimes also come from different perspectives, like if I am in a country or in an area where there is no national film fund, and there is no ecosystem to support, and there is no TV to support or broadcast like system to support any of this, and then I'm going to the rich country just because I need that money, then it's also have this potential of unfair co-production, because it's become about like one producer is bringing the story and the character and the whatever, and the other producer is bringing the money. And here it's become again like really tricky, really tricky to take till the end, especially if it starts like in the very early. And I can always see this imbalance between South and North, for example, when it happened. East West also, it's like a big potential for that, like easily can goes in a really wrong. So keeping balance, I think there is no guarantee, but I think during the curation, like when I'm selecting even the project or the invited producers, that's why we have a special a call for producer without a project who are coming to search for a project to co-produce. And I do that after the main call for the project. So first we know what kind of project we have, like what's pool of selection for the project we have, and then we look at the profile of the potential co-producer to invite them or to accept them, because it's really a call. You have to apply, we have to say yes, and then you will be invited and cover all your
Then
participation.
we can fund you to go.
Yeah, exactly, because sometimes like you don't want to be a reason also for this wrong matchmaking, like you have like no control, no guarantee, or no like you cannot, you know, like make a contract with everybody that this is going to be an amazing co-production, but at least you can do your job as studying all these potentials, you know, like what company profile you are inviting to here, you know, like what history of production and good experience for filmmakers, you know, you ask directors for their and that experience, and then you are trying somehow to really reduce what can goes wrong and give a potential of things that could happen. And that's, I don't know if can we already speak about the successful story, because yesterday I was told like there was a showcases from Norway, great Elena producer from Norway. She was presenting her project, and she mentioned that she was in Dok Leipzig Copro Market last year, and she met two co-producers, one from Netherlands and one from Germany, and now they are already preparing to apply for Euromage. So this happened like already in like 7 months. Like from October, they started to establish the two potential production, and now already they are here in Cannes speaking about their plan for Euromage and other stuff. And it's sometimes very difficult also to measure this success, because we take a project in development or an early production, and that's mean they still have long journey to come out. Because this year in Vision du Riel, in main competition, there was a project that was in Copro Market in 2018 but there was also 4 other projects like from 2019 and 2022 and other editions, so it was very crowded
But lots of success stories, which is nice to hear.
yeah, I mean, it's like this year it's the 20th edition, so I can say that it's quite well established
It's going well.
co-production. But like so far we are still in the first half of the year, and there was 4 projects premiered in Berlinale, 5 in Vision du Riel, and 3 in Copenhagen Docs, and like some other also like.
Maybe just to, because we were talking about challenge, it's true that don't forget that in making an international co-production is production engineering. And at the end, when money comes, it's never
more
free.
difficult.
And that means you have to understand the rules of the country you're going to co-produce with, and sometimes it's amazing, the opportunities are amazing, but you have to be ready to welcome crew members from that country, or to understand that you have to spend the money in that country. And you said I'm coming back from Chile, and it's a film we're doing 5 countries. So Chile, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain. It's a hell. but it was the only way for a first film from the director from Chile. It was the only possibility to get, and it's not a crazy budget. It's like 1.5 million, but we had to be 5 to get that amount, because it's a first feature in Chile with actors that are not known. But at the end, it's really complex.
I'd love to come back to success stories, because that sounds like one where you've really made it work and really looked at how to kind of piece together that puzzle. Elham, do you have any? I'd love to have like a specific example of a project that was an international co-production, why it worked, and whether you mean that kind of formal co-production or not, but why it worked.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just kind of springboarding off what you're saying, I'm like, how do you make it? It's like producing is this kind of creative, strategic, financial kind of mix, especially when you're going to be engaging with the space. And how do you make it work is like, we play lots of backgammon and work out how to kind of, you're always working with the same range of things, but you need to be able to, some things are really obvious, like, if you get a 5 and a 3, when you roll the dice, but if you get a 1 and a 6, it really depends what's on your board. like what you do with it. I mean, one example I'd give is a film that I produced in Japan called Of Love and Law by Hikaru Toda. It was a film where everything was, the director was Japanese and the subject was in Japan and in Japanese. It was, and I was the only producer on it for most of the film. And we were never able to make it into a formal co-production because we never seemed to find the right producer to work with us. But I suppose it became a Japanese co-production for two reasons. One was because actually was recognizing that that director learned in the making of that film that they didn't want to focus their film making in the UK, which is where we'd met, but they wanted to continue on in Japan. And so it was significant to then launch a company that could hold that side of things. And it also meant that we learned together how to navigate a system that was very, very different from the system that we were navigating from the UK. So that seems like a slightly odd example, but for me, that was really a squaring the circle situation. And also one where it meant that we could then bring in the right people to help enable that project, where I'm producing from the UK a film that's taking place. It's like an observational documentary that was shot over 3-4 years. I obviously wasn't there all the time, but I also wasn't on the other side of a phone call all the time because it's 8-hour time difference. And all the negotiations that I'm having are largely actually in Japanese. So, and sometimes it was valuable that I was coming from the perspective of a company that was established in the UK and that had certain kind of rules and parameters that I had to follow, but sometimes it was important that there was a partner that also wasn't the director, someone that we brought into the director's company and kind of enabled, and also enabled to have their first kind of credits as a producer within that context. This sounds super roundabout, but this is also why you have to be able to play backgammon to like imagine the possibilities, I guess. And for me, that was successful because it meant that the film could also have a Japanese identity, which was important to the film. But it was also important to the film that had a British identity. It meant that it could travel in a certain way. So, for instance, festival-wise, it launched at BFI Flare, but it then had a second screening at London Film Festival. It meant that it had the visibility that could springboard it into having a theatrical release and like bespoke release also in certain parts of the country, which is more difficult for an observational documentary shot entirely in Japan and subtitled in the UK, which isn't a space where that's a kind of naturally an easy thing to do. So that's a kind of slant example.
I'm wondering if Alessandra and Guevara are now trying to think about introducing backgammon lessons in the marketplace. We have just 15 minutes left, and I know that Justin has to leave in about 5 minutes. So if anybody has any questions for our esteemed panel, it would be really great to hear from you now. And I will just, yes, we've got a question at the front here. Thank you. And then we'll go to you at the back, sir.
Hi, I just wondered if you did fiction or is this all doc?
No, I do fiction, animation, and documentaries.
And we've got another question at the back over here.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the great panel. Just a quick question on the point of coming from. I'm based in Dubai, in UAE, and we don't have an official fund. But how things work generally is like there are sponsorship money. In such a setup, like how do you see for such a market or for such a country to be involved in productions with your countries, you know, because there is not an established treaty. Do you have any recommendations? Thank you.
I wonder if anyone has experience in that.
I can imagine because I'm like also like originally I'm a filmmaker from Syria, and I left to live in Germany 10 years ago, and I started there like co-production, and I established my own work before I joined Dok Leipzig. So I can imagine how difficult it is to produce and then inside in the Arab world, because the majority of like the finance source are really like the minimum. You have the Doha Film Institute, but this is an international, which is make it also competitive. But you have AFAC also, like the Arab Culture, Fun and Arts. That's a very interesting opportunity to start, because it's always, like, I would say it's always extremely like important to have the basic fund, or to secure minimum money as a main production country before you go and establish like a co-production with other rich countries. So you are saving your share, you are saving your ownership on the project. Otherwise, it will be a really difficult dynamics. I would say that from my experience as someone who tried to produce in that area and then come to Europe, and I did co-production there. I think, and that's also remind me that, for example, one of our regulation in Copro and Dok Leipzig, it's to have a minimum secure money, because you will not establish actually a really valuable co-production if you have zero money. And it will also make it very difficult for other co-producers to come on board with you without this minimum money. And sometimes, and it depends on the different region, sometimes the producer investment could be considered as the first secure money on the place before you go and ask for other like, yeah, I don't know if this is helpful, but
I might have a counter example because we're co-producing with Nepal, and it's actually a country where there is absolutely no fund. So you can try to get private money from India or the US. There are specific funds for this country, but there will be no fund in Nepal. So we build the co-production with, right now it's France, Germany, probably Norway, and Brazil. And so all the money will come from those countries. And we are trying to get as much private money as possible, because the private money will be the money that we can spend in Nepal and make the film happen. And maybe to add the funds you mentioned, you also have access to the Red Sea Fund, I guess, with filmmakers from Dubai.
yeah, but also just to continue, because there are many other funds. I'm experienced in documentary, like Bertha Fund, and many other like international fund that are supporting countries like Nepal or in the Arab world or many other country. Yeah.
Can I just add to that also? Sorry, just this idea that they're like, I think they're different lines of like, there are things that are non-negotiable, so like a kind of official co-production, and then there are things that are negotiable. And I think this question of like where the project was originated and where the money comes from they have these different values. I think we've often placed the value on money mainly as a way of understanding like how a project is set up because of like tax rebates, etc. If you're not going to have access to those, even if you have access to those, everything is to some extent negotiable. Everything, like I feel like there are rules, and then actually there are ways that you can develop exceptions. A lot of co-production treaties have come about as the result of partnerships or collaborations that have proven some point, and therefore a discussion has taken place and something has developed as a result. And I think we should remember that as we make our films, that, okay, yes, there are these structures in place, but everything to some extent is negotiable. I think we need to be clear about, okay, what is going to be impossible, make our lives very difficult, and ultimately result in nothing, and what is a kind of grey area that you can work within. And for me, money that comes from a source that you're happy to work with and that doesn't sit in a kind of clear national space, what does that do for you? And one of it can be in the formal co-production route, but then you can also look at it in terms of, say, profit share, and you can think about the positioning of different companies in the profit share or the returns, and I think these are small ways to start also shifting or developing or making partnerships possible where they hadn't been before. And that can exist like within one country. It so often happened that I've very often been told we don't do that. And frankly, that's the beginning of a conversation. The start of the conversation can be no, and then you need to assess whether this is a no that you can invest some time in to kind of massage into something else, or whether that's a no that's going to really make your life hell, or a no that kind of makes clear something that is a red line for you and that you don't want to cross, and then take it from there. But I think the kind of existing systems are in place as a result of something, and we also have the kind of responsibility to shift and shape them into the image of a film industry that reflects how we work.
Yeah, I just want to echo what has already been said. I mean, your presence is absolutely valuable in each co-production market. So if you're not eligible to go there with a project, just go there anyway, because do not underestimate how much the co-production markets, or generally the markets, can work also on policy-making level. That's something that we do. For instance, in our case, when we choose the East or West and West focus, we go for those countries who do not talk to each other. So we really try to involve institutions, and we have a different voice than producer or you as a filmmaker. You know, we try to involve them, we try to encourage them to talk and actually to open doors that were not really there the day before. So it's actually, you know, your presence there could lead you to a more creative structure of co-production, of course, as has already been said. So there are opportunities. But on the other hand, if you keep traveling and your presence and your colleagues are there, the industry will feel the needs to have you in. And that will give us a weapon, different weapons to knock to some doors that will not be open to you, but maybe through our Ministry of Culture or our national film funds can actually be effective. We have done something similar, for instance, in Italy. It's an easy country, I know, but for instance, there were no chance to cooperate with Baltic countries, and we had a focus on Baltic countries in 2016. After 2.5 years of work, they co-signed a co-development award that is still there. It's a small amount that, you know, but still it's helping Italian and Baltic producers to talk and ideally to bring something to co-produce. So use the platform, the market also in this sense.
I think we've got another question at the back.
I'm saying goodbye.
Karen. Okay, thank you so much.
I'm really sorry I have to go. And just I wanted to say that I co-produce with 20 countries, including the US, Australia, and never UK. So I really hope that it's going to happen soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justin. A question at the back.
Thank you for the session. I'm a filmmaker from India. I am trying to make my first film, and I just wanted to ask you that we get mostly rejected back home because we are trying to make our first film. And if you could share some tips for somebody who's making a film for the first time like me, it'll be wonderful. We are trying to do a co-production between UK and India because my film travels half in India, half in UK. So for that.
Thank you.
I mean, I think there are some spaces that really welcome like a first film and to kind of focus on making your first film in those spaces. But in other spaces, I think this kind of idea of people who know is something that's a really flawed part of this industry. I think some of the most boring films are being made by very established filmmakers. And actually all the exciting stuff is by much fresher kind of talents. And a lot of that is about being nimble with financing, about having to think very deeply about creative. It's not about how much money you have, it's about what you do with it. So, you know, in spaces where you feel that there's a kind of reluctance because supposedly you haven't proven yourself, don't talk about the fact that it's your first film. Talk about what you're going to do and focus on that. And kind of, you know, it's like they say the pitch is kind of, it's half what you say and then how you say it, or kind of people buy into you, they don't buy into... That's the kind of on one side of things. The other side of things is how what you structure around you and how those people also kind of, you know, stand with you, how you make the film together. So it might be that one person in a presentation is doing the kind of the inspiring dream part of what this film will be, and another person is kind of the severe, it's going to be made, like we're going to make it because I'm sitting here and I believe in it and I've proven myself in these ways. But it reminds me of an anecdote. One of my students was showing my CV, sharing her CV with me, and she was really worried that she kind of didn't have enough film credentials. And she was a midwife. And I was like, oh my God, you know how to deliver babies. I think I'd trust you with anything. You know, and I think to recognize that we have life skills that we bring into the things that we're doing that are absolutely relevant to the films that we're making. And so to really just know that for yourself. And yeah.
I definitely agree with Ilham, because we also welcome first-time filmmakers to apply for the co-promo market, because we believe it's also about, like, as long as you know what you're talking about in this proposal, in this project, in this film, then you are definitely like welcome to take this opportunity and meet a potential international partner. Yeah.
The key word to me is network. Go ahead, talk with people, try to figure out what is working, try to test your story, your project, despite the fact that it's a debut film, because you have specific platform as a market for debut and specific festivals. Also another hat that I have is Venice Critics Week. Within the Venice Film Festival, we only welcome 7 debut films, and we always look for new and fresh voices. So absolutely, but if you are in development with your project, going out there, talking with other producers, with sales, will really help you to drive your project in the best direction to make it in the best way.
What amazing answers. Thank you all so much. And I think we've got time for one more question. We've got maybe just 4 minutes left. But if we don't have one...
I remember something just to share from, there is a CoPro social club happening every day at 4:30. I don't know if you saw it already in the Cannes Docs schedule for documentary filmmaker, and it's something amazing happening when producers are presenting themselves and their profile, their company profile, and what kind of co-production they are interested in. And yesterday there was one of these questions, like how to define co-production in one word, and it was learning. It's really learning process all the way, like that might goes for 10 years sometimes for a project, but it's really an endless learning process that I believe in. It was nice to share.
Thank you all so much for sharing so generously with us. Please give a big round of applause to our wonderful panelists.